I've kept my name anonymous for privacy reasons, but this happened 5 years ago. At the time, I was traveling with my dog, Rocky. Not the most original name, but I named him after the mountain range. I found him as a stray 3 years earlier, a medium-sized Australian Shepherd mix. The vets estimated he was 6 or 7 years old. No collar, no tag, no information. After weeks of searching for an owner, I gave up and adopted him. Rocky became my adventure buddy. We hiked, backpacked, and explored every trail we could find. But one trip, one small, seemingly harmless trip, turned into something I'll never forget. It was supposed to be simple, a one-day backpack along a firebreak trail to a retired lookout tower. There was almost no information about the place. The best I could dig up were decades-old rules saying it was a first-come, first-served public shelter with a 3-night limit. Outdated, abandoned, forgotten, I didn't care. I wasn't planning to stay overnight. The plan was to reach the ridge, glance at the view, and hike a few more miles down to a small creek campsite. About 30 minutes from the tower, dark clouds rolled over the ridge like an ominous curtain. Heavy, low-hanging black clouds. I quickened my pace with Rocky at my side, but before we could reach the tower, a storm erupted, violent and sudden. From the ledge, I could see sheets of rain and flickering lightning striking the mountain across the valley. It was moving toward us. I usually don't mind storms. Camping in rain is tolerable, but this felt different. I didn't know if we could reach the creek in time, and the forest was already transforming into a world of shadows and wind. Then the rain hit the tower like a hammer. There was no decision to make anymore. We huddled inside the tower. It was mostly what I expected. White paint peeling from the walls, a rusted stove in one corner, and nothing else. No mattress, no remnants of past campers, just empty, hollow space. Within minutes, the storm intensified. Rain pounded the roof, turning into a deafening roar. Wind sliced through gaps in the wood, making the whole structure shudder. Every gust made the tower sway, creaking like it was alive. I tried to make us comfortable. I laid out my sleeping bag, made a small freeze-dried meal. Rocky, however, was terrified. He paced, tail tucked, low whines escaping him. He hated storms, but this one had him unnerved beyond his usual fear. The tower's movement, the height, or something else I couldn't see. I called him close, trying to soothe him, and he finally curled beside me. The rain drumming on the roof lulled me, and I fell asleep. Then, silence. I woke sometime past 2 a.m. The storm was gone. No wind, no rain, no thunder. Just a suffocating, unnatural silence. And Rocky? Not in my sleeping bag. He stood by the door, eyes wide, staring into the darkness, whining softly. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped outside with him. The forest was eerie, stripped of sound. Even the earth seemed to hold its breath. We walked the creaky steps to the field below the tower. For a mile, we moved cautiously until the rain began again, lighter this time. We slowed our pace, eventually making it back to the trail's edge. Then I saw it. Under the tower, just past the corner of the supports, a thin metal glint caught my flashlight. A cellar door, slightly ajar, just as I had glimpsed earlier. The memory of the hollow thumping, thunk, 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 made my stomach tighten. My gut told me what I already feared. Something had been moving down there while I slept. I approached, keeping Rocky close. Slowly, trembling, I lifted one of the metal doors. The steps descended just a few feet. Mud, fresh, wet, smeared in streaks marked each step, as if something had been climbing up and down recently. My heart pounded. The air smelled damp and heavy. Then Rocky barked, a sharp, terrified bark that shattered the stillness. I slammed the door shut and spun around, flashlight swinging. Movement. Something shifted in the tree line behind us. Something watching. Eyes I couldn't see. I called Rocky, grabbed him, and ran up the stairs back into the tower. I packed my sleeping bag, strapped it to my pack, and didn't look back. Someone or something was out there, and I was not staying to find out why. We ran down the trail, my flashlight bouncing over the dark shapes of the forest. Then I instinctively turned back. The cellar doors were open again. Rocky froze, staring into the black, gaping void beneath the tower. His fur bristled, low growl escaping him. I pulled him along. We ran. Later, I called the Forest Service. The ranger's voice was calm, almost rehearsed. The tower was off limits, no one allowed, no explanation. When pressed, he hesitated, then muttered vague hints about incidents that caused the area to be restricted. I never got specifics, but I felt it anyway, the weight of danger that lingered there. That was why there was no information. That was why the tower had been abandoned. I've thought about it endlessly. Someone or something living in the cellar? Maybe. But then, why leave in the middle of the night? Why watch us from the trees? It's been years, and I still don't know. I've come to terms with that, but I know this. If I hadn't left when I did, I might not be here to tell the story.
He didn't tell me where it was, not exactly. He seemed almost protective of it, like he didn't want anyone else to find it. I decided to risk it and messaged him directly. At first he hesitated, but eventually he sent me the coordinates, on the strict condition that I didn't share them. That place was supposed to be a secret, untouched. When I pulled it up on the map, there it was, a small, isolated structure in the middle of nowhere. No other posts, no hints, nothing. It looked abandoned, forgotten. We packed up and left early on a Monday morning. The journey there was unnerving. No trails, no clear path, nothing to guide us except the cold, unyielding GPS. The forest felt wrong from the start. The air was thick, the trees silent, but heavy with some unspoken presence. If Derek hadn't been there, I would have turned back immediately. My gut screamed at me, but I pressed on. For nearly an hour, there were no signs that we were even close. No paths, no footprints, nothing to hint that anyone or anything had been there before us. And then, just 30 feet away, we saw it. A cabin perched on the hill, gray and lifeless, its windows staring blankly like dead eyes. It wasn't the kind of lookout tower I imagined, but it was real, and it sent a shiver down my spine. The cabin sat low, almost crawling on the hill, its roof caved in on one side, leaning slightly as if it had shifted on its foundation over decades. The wood siding was splintered, the windows broken or coated in grime, fog, and something that looked like it had been painted over. Derek couldn't hide his excitement, but I felt only unease. He knocked. I wanted him not to, but curiosity edged him on. He opened the door. The inside was darker than the forest outside. Even though the cabin was surrounded by windows, the fog and grime blocked nearly every trace of light. Junk littered the floor, old tools, broken lanterns, and beer cans that looked ancient. But on the far wall, a single piece of paper gleamed under the dim light. "Hope you're happy." It was new, clean, and impossibly out of place. We stared at it. Whoever left it knew we were coming. It wasn't a coincidence, it was deliberate. My stomach turned. The sun dipped low. I shut the door and tried to settle in. We cooked ramen over the stove, the clinking of pots echoing eerily through the cabin. But nothing felt normal. The air was thick, the silence oppressive. We didn't speak, not really, just ate in tense quiet, listening to the walls creak in the wind, each groan louder than the last. It felt like the cabin was breathing, like it was alive. Eventually, we curled into our sleeping bags. Sleep came, but it wasn't rest. I awoke to pitch-black darkness. The creaks of the cabin were soft but persistent. Something was off. My eyes drifted to Derek's sleeping bag. Empty. Derek. Silence. Derek. Thud. Something heavy hit the wood. Another thud. I looked up. Shadows moved across the ceiling, slow and deliberate. Then the door creaked open, and Derek stepped inside. I nearly jumped out of my skin. He looked just as startled, but I told him to stay quiet. Whatever I'd been hearing stopped. He said he'd gone outside to take a leak. I asked him if he saw anything. He looked at me like I'd lost my mind. I went outside. Nothing. Maybe I was imagining it. We got through the night, but it didn't feel like we slept. The next day was worse. Everything was unnervingly still. Derek and I explored, but the forest was endless, twisted and half dead. Nothing moved except us, and it felt wrong, like eyes were following us just beyond the trees. Sundown came again, and we returned to the cabin. As Derek reached to close the door, he froze. His eyes locked on something in the distance. "Come here," he whispered. I walked over and looked out the doorway. 40 feet from the cabin, a man stood in the shadows. He didn't move. He didn't blink. He just watched. "Hey, can we help you? Are you good?" I called out. The man didn't respond. He stared for a moment longer, then silently vanished into the trees. We ate, tried to talk, tried to pretend everything was normal. Then the shadows moved, faint, slow, creeping across the walls. A figure emerged at the edge of the window, silent, watching us. It circled the cabin, and then knocks, 3 soft, deliberate knocks at the door. Derek slammed the bolt lock down. Then came 3 loud, thunderous hits. We didn't move. We couldn't move. Our hearts pounded in unison, the sound of terror in our own ears. And then, nothing. Silence. Morning never came fast enough. We bolted from that place, sprinting through the forest, feeling eyes on us the entire way. Once out, I checked Reddit. The post that gave us the coordinates, deleted. The account, gone. Whoever or whatever left the note, it knew exactly what we would find. Derek and I still explore abandoned places, still chase the thrill, but nothing has ever been as terrifying as those 2 nights at that cabin. We still have no idea what we saw, no idea what followed us, and some nights I still swear I can feel that presence just beyond the edge of the woods, waiting.
I didn't expect anything strange to happen that weekend. If anything, I went out there because nothing ever happened there. The lake sat hidden deep in the woods, quiet to the point of feeling forgotten, like it had slipped through time and been left behind. No signs, no markers, just a narrow, half-erased footpath you'd miss if you weren't already looking for it. My dad used to bring me there when I was a kid. It was our place, and later, when I started coming alone, it stayed that way, unchanged, untouched. In all the years I'd known that lake, I had never seen another person there, not once. No trash, no fire pits, no footprints. Honestly, there was never even any proof that anyone else had ever existed there at all. That's why I didn't think twice about camping there for the weekend. The first day went exactly as expected. I arrived, set up camp, and spent the day doing nothing, just sitting by the water, listening to the wind move through the trees, watching the sun sink behind the tree line. The silence felt clean, almost heavy,
like the woods were holding their breath. That night passed without incident. It was the second day when things began to feel wrong. I spent most of the afternoon walking around the lake, letting my thoughts wander. I must have circled it 3 or 4 times. The water never changed. The trees never moved. Everything stayed perfectly still. Too still. But it was peaceful, and I remember thinking how lucky I was to have a place like this all to myself. Then, on one of my laps, I saw them. Footprints. They were pressed into the dirt right along the edge of the tree line, clear and unmistakable. I stopped immediately. My heart sank before my brain could catch up. I had walked this same path over and over for hours. I would have seen them before. There was no way I could have missed them. They looked fresh. What unsettled me most wasn't just that someone else had been there. It was how. These weren't shoe prints. They were bare footprints. Toes, heels, skin pressed into soil. The spot they appeared didn't even have easy access to the water. This wasn't a place you'd take your shoes off to swim. And if someone had been in the lake, I would have seen them. I always saw everything out there. So why hadn't I seen them? The thought crept in slowly, unwelcome and cold. Maybe they had seen me first. I followed the prints with my eyes. They came out of the woods, stopped at the edge of the lake, as if someone had stood there watching the water, watching me, and then turned straight back into the trees. I didn't follow them. Something deep in my gut told me not to. Instead, I went back to my campsite, constantly scanning the tree line. I never saw anyone. As the sun dropped lower, the unease grew heavier. The woods felt different now, like I was no longer alone, even if I couldn't prove it. When night fell, I built my fire higher than usual and sat close to it, forcing myself to focus on anything except the darkness beyond the light. It didn't help. Not long into the night, I heard footsteps. They came from the trees. I froze and turned toward the sound. There was more than one set, slow, deliberate. 2 people, walking toward my campsite. I stared into the darkness until they stepped into the edge of the firelight. A man and a woman. They stopped just outside the glow. I couldn't see their faces, only their silhouettes. No details, no expressions. I couldn't even tell how old they were. "Can I help you?" I called out. The woman turned instantly and sprinted back into the woods, vanishing like she'd never been there. The man didn't react. He didn't even look at her. He just stood there. That's when I noticed his feet. Bare, completely bare. My stomach dropped. These were the ones from the lake. I asked again if he needed help, my voice shaking now. Without a word, he turned and walked back into the trees, quiet as a shadow. That was enough. I packed everything as fast as I could. I didn't care how paranoid it made me look. I wasn't staying another second. I kicked the unlit logs out of the fire so it would die quickly and left my campsite behind. The hike out was nearly 2 hours. At first, every sound made me flinch, but as I got farther away, I started to calm, until about 40 minutes in, when the forest went completely silent. No insects, no wind. Then I heard running footsteps. They were close, maybe 100 feet away, definitely human. I couldn't see anything, so I kept walking. Minutes later, I heard them again, this time on the other side of me. Too quiet, like bare feet on dirt. They followed me in bursts, running, stopping, circling, always just out of sight. I don't think I've ever been more terrified than I was on that walk. Somehow, I made it back to my truck. I drove away and never looked back. I wish I could explain who they were or what they wanted. I can't. Sometimes I wonder if they were even alive at all. I don't know. And I never went back.